Good morning. Okay. Well, we're good. We're streaming, we're good.
Thank you.
All right.
Screaming, we're good.
We're yeah. There's bound to be screaming for sure.
Grilling, gnashing of teeth.
All the time.
I'm gonna give you this one because it's
All
really
the
hot.
time.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 9:10. I need. Let's call it 30. Make sure I don't go too terribly over my time. All right. Good morning.
Morning.
So, fourth Sunday in Lent. And, which, I mean, we're doing the series so that we're kind of departing from the usual kind of flow of Lent. But just FYI, and I'll mention this in the service, is fourth Sunday in Lent traditionally is called Laetare Sunday. It's the Sunday where I wear pink, well, rose. And always, here's a real easy way to tell who you're dealing with, what kind of person you're dealing with, is especially with pastors. You come to a Sunday like this and say, okay, you say the color of the color of the day, the liturgical color is pink. If they go along with it, okay, cool, awesome. If they're like, it's rose, it's like, oh, whatever. Because you can, everybody's like, oh yeah, it's not pink. The color of the day is not pink. It's rose. Which, honestly, whenever I think of rose, I think of red anyway, so I don't know why pink is such a woo. It's pink. I'll be wearing my pink shoes. So, the point of that is that it works as kind of the traditional introit that we don't use. I think the one-year lectionary is probably where we can see it. I think it begins, rejoice, O Jerusalem, something, something, something. So since the introit begins with rejoice, it's a Sunday of rejoicing. So it's treated as kind of like, Lent. Lent is, it's this penitential season. There's more of a somber, reflective tone. And then, well, here's the thing. The bell ring, it's like, ah. So there's this, the vibe is very penitential. We've taken out the Alleluias.
It's very happy.
Sorry. Why we can't have nice things. So joy is not usually our Lenten feeling, but we have kind of this breaking into Lent, like this idea that we can't hold back our joyfulness for Easter, so we have to have a little bit of it before Easter. We get a little bit of joy. Which I guess I get it. Even though Lent's kind of a fun animal because technically speaking, the Sundays in Lent are like little mini Easters. The Sundays in Lent aren't like really considered part of Lent because I think we regard the weekdays of Lent, or every day but Sunday in Lent is part of it, but Sunday is kind of its own separate thing, but we still kind of, it's a whole thing. If we had any real liturgical nerds in here, where's Jim?
You don't count the Sundays.
Yeah,
You count
it's
40 days, you don't count.
right. So Sundays in Lent don't really count. So why is it a whole thing? Why, I don't know. There's long-standing reasons for why we do all these things. Anyway, so today that's what's behind it all, but we won't even address it, so that's fine. Instead, our glory to the God who leads is the theme that we have today, glory to the God who heals. So our texts and all that have to do with healing. And very short ones today. So the Isaiah text is great Good Friday text. Surely he is borne our griefs, carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted, but he was wounded for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was a chastisement that brought us peace. With his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We returned everyone to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. I mean, that's just great stuff. It's really with his stripes we are healed. And of course, the spiritual healing that we get, forgiveness of sins, all that good stuff. 1 Peter 2, right there with it. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For you were straying like sheep, but have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Add to that, then, great text from John 9, which is what the message is focusing on. And is a great one for dealing with healing, because the text, John 9, is about the blind man. He's a man who was born blind, so he's never been able to see. From day one, he's been blind. And they're passing by, Jesus and his disciples are passing by. Disciples take notice, like, oh, hey, look, Jesus, a blind dude. Blind from birth, so either they knew him, they heard about him, whatever. And they're asking, whose sin caused it? And he's like, it wasn't sin that caused it, but for the glory of God to be revealed. Okay, cool. So Jesus, this is one of his really fun healings where he spits on the ground, makes some mud, takes the mud, smears his eyes with the mud, and then says, go wash it off. Jesus continues on his way, man goes, washes, and all of a sudden he can see. I can't imagine. I mean, the guy knows that it was this Jesus guy who did this to him, because obviously people around him were saying, oh, you're Jesus, whatever. But I can only imagine, being blind, and then, oh, here's this Jesus, he can heal you. It's like, okay, and then you feel, okay, you're waiting, like, all right, I'm ready for it, and then you feel something wet and squishy being placed over your eyes. Just, that would have been a little bit shocking, and like, unless they told him, like, hey, get ready. He's making mud. We don't know what he's doing, but yeah, doing that, which is fun because he's like blind, and then Jesus covers his eyes even more. So he's like, okay, he's blind. Now he's really double blind. And Jesus says, okay, go wash yourself. Go wash it off. I'm gonna make you all messy. Now go wash. And he does it when he can see. So this is awesome. And the point that I make in the sermon is that this text is about this blind man gaining sight, but that's just almost incidental to the ultimate or the overarching theme of this text, in that this blind man who never saw Jesus before and didn't see Jesus during and didn't see Jesus until much after all the conflict goes on, his eyes are opened and he comes to faith. He believes in Jesus without ever having seen him, which is a great tie-in with us who have never seen Jesus. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. We live by faith and not sight, all that stuff. So you have this great progression through the text. And if you looked up John 9, you see where he's healed. And then immediately the first group of people that he encounters are his neighbors, who are like, wait a second, who's this guy? Who's this guy who can see? Because they're like, isn't this the guy who used to beg? And they're like, yeah, it's him. And they're like, no, it can't be him. He was a blind guy. And so they're asking him, how were your eyes open? And he says, the man called Jesus. So he's a man called Jesus at the very beginning. Man called Jesus, he opened my eyes. And he tells them how it happened, and they said, where is he? He's like, I don't know. I was blind. Don't know. So then they bring him to the Pharisees. And part of their deal is it was a Sabbath day when he healed, so shouldn't be doing that. And so the Pharisees are starting grilling him and like, okay, well, how did he do this? So for the second time, he's like, Okay, he put mud on my eyes. I washed, now I see. And the Pharisees are saying, he's not from God because he doesn't observe the Sabbath, which is just rich because he literally heals a man from blindness from birth. So it's not like, oh, here, let me just, you're just, eyesight is dim. It's like, no, he was blind. So for the Pharisees, it's not that what Jesus did, it's just the fact that he broke the Sabbath. And then others are struggling with it. He says, oh, how can a man who is a sinner perform such signs? So Jesus breaks the Sabbath. He's a sinner. Therefore, he can't be anything special. And they were all divided. So they turned to the blind man and said, what do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened. Then, so first he says, a man called Jesus. Then the Pharisees ask him, what do you say about him? He's a prophet. All right. Cool. So now he's like, oh, he's a prophet. All right, cool. The Jews didn't believe that he'd been born blind. This is some big con. So then they bring his parents into the mix. His parents are like, why are you asking us? Because they figure they're going to get in trouble because the Pharisees are out for whatever. Hey, we know this is our son, but we don't know what happened. We weren't there. He was blind. That's all we know. Okay. Ask him. He's of age. Let him speak for himself. So they're afraid of the Jews. They don't want to say anything. For the Jews had already agreed that the one who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. So even his parents are like, sounds a little Messiah-esque, so they're not going to say anything. So the second time they go, talk to the blind guy, and they said, give glory to God. We know this man is a sinner. And this is where we get into this awesome back and forth between him and the Pharisees, which, I don't know why. This probably says way more about me. I picture this is a very Monty Python-esque kind of conversation. At least it works out in my head like this. I know has anybody seen the Monty Python Life of Brian? Okay. If you haven't, don't see it. Certainly not on my recommendation. I am not recommending it at all. It is hilarious though. And see, in my head, I go to something like where they have forget Bible study. We're talking Monty Python. They have this great scene where there's a public stoning because a man said Jehovah, use the name of God. And the thing is, Brian, who is the main character, he's walking with his mom. And they're going to the stoning, but his mom has to wear a beard because women aren't allowed to go to a stoning. So they get there, and basically all the people gathered to stone this guy to death are all women with beards on. Because they're like, all right, because they're all stone. And the Pharisee in charge like, are there any women here? No. And it's just stupid hilarious. And there's this back and forth about, he's like, all I said was Jehovah. And the Pharisee's like, blasphemy. And then a rock flies and hits him. And he's like, who did that? They're all quiet. And then they start pointing each other out. And like, well, but he said Jehovah. And then they start throwing stones at the other person who said it. It's stupid. It's so funny and stupid. Anyway, that's what goes wrong in my head when I read this. So, like I said, that tells you a lot about me. So when I'm reading this, I get Monty Python sketches going through my head. So he says, or they say, we know this man is a sinner. And he's like, I don't know whether he's a sinner. Good Lord, one thing I do know, I was blind, now I see. What more do you need? And he says, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? Which they already asked and he already answered. He says, I told you already. You wouldn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Which, I kind of like to think that this guy is, for a guy who is has been blind his entire life, all of a sudden he can read a room real well. Because, it's either the perfect, purest, naive answer, he's just this he healed me, he's wonderful, he's from God. Do you guys want to be his disciple too? I read it more antagonistic. He's just fed up. And he's like, dude, I've answered this 3 times already. You guys keep prodding me. Look, clearly you want to be his disciple, which incenses them. And they're like, oh, you're a disciple, which he never said he was, but whatever. We're disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but this guy, we don't know where he even comes from. And then the guy's response, well, he's like, "Nyeh. Here's an astonishing thing. You don't know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he does listen to the one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." Like, ooh. So they answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and you were trying to teach us," and they drove him out. Shut up and go away. Which is not the best response. So this is great. This is good stuff. So not only is he a prophet then at that point, but he's a man from God. So each time this guy is dealing with Jesus, we're talking about Jesus, he's elevating Jesus more and more and more and more. And then at the end of the text, Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, which is fantastic, because again, Jesus just like, boom, healed, it goes off. And then he hears later, like, they drove that guy out? Let's go find him. So Jesus goes back for him, and he finds him and says, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And the guy says, "Well, who is he? Tell me so that I may believe in him." And Jesus said, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." Which is right there. You have seen him. The Son of Man, you have seen him. He hadn't. I mean, not technically speaking. Like, he hadn't seen Jesus. He was blind. Jesus left. So we're not talking about, sight, but, in the heart, faith. He has seen Jesus. The only way he could say, begin confessing Christ is from God is through faith. He says, I am he. And then so the blind man says, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. I believe, and he worshiped. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" And Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say we see, your sin remains." It's like, ooh, it's just good stuff. Or God, Messiah, whatever. So he has this nice little progression from he's healed, and then confessing faith in God, faith in Jesus, he believes, he worships. So you have this really nice contrast between the blind man who sees better than anybody, and then the Pharisees who see just fine and they're completely blind to the whole thing. So that's all kind of fun. But in regards to the healing aspect, is that the whole point of this is, what did Jesus heal? It's like, well, yeah, he made him see, but I mean, he made the blind man to see again. But before he had so he opens his eyes, but even before he saw Jesus, Jesus tells him, you've already seen him. You've already encountered the one who heals you. So this is the big healing, that he knows now who Jesus is. That he worships him. He believes in Jesus. So faith is the great healing that we all receive. And it would be nice if we got some of that physical healing more often. But that isn't necessarily promised to us until resurrection. What is promised to us right now is faith and the healing that comes through that. So it's a fun day for this. Yeah.
Got this crowd on its feet.
Any questions, comments? Anything on Isaiah or 1 Peter?
This is what happens in here when pastor promises fun.
I can't get worked up like last week because I lost my voice. Oh, you weren't here for that one. Yeah, that was great fun.
So sorry.
I started yelling at the end of it, and I was just so excited.
Didn't have you to tamp him down.
Yeah, no, take it down a level or two.
I don't want to scare Lizzie off.
And unbelievers might look at this and say, God made this guy blind for his entire life so that the works might be displayed at this moment.
Yeah, what of it?
Just saying.
You know, I mean, how would I approach that? I mean, and I guess one way you could go with that is to say that, well, you know, it was, you know, was it his sins or his parents' sins? Well, Jesus says no, it wasn't. You know, was the blindness a product of sin? We'd say, well, yeah, sure. Everything that is, you know, that's part of broken creation. Our bodies are falling apart all over the place. You know, that's an effect of sin. You know, not that like, ooh, you know, I ran that stop sign, therefore my knee is acting up today. My knee's acting up today because I had to go upstairs. But you know, it's not like that direct correlation with that. So we could say, you know, did God make him blind, or is this like an effect of kind of sin in general? We say, well, you know, it's effect of sin in general. And Jesus is speaking more to purpose, like, or saying like, you say, well, what good? Like, what good is it? You know, did God make him blind just so he could do that? And Jesus would be saying, no, you don't understand how this works. He was blind because of sin in general, brokenness. But the purpose, so what you see as a purpose behind it is that God is going to do, you're going to see God's glory through this. Which is in the same way, you know, where you can point to the cross. It's like, oh, it's horrible, it's hideous. You know, what is the good of the cross? Well, we know the good of the cross. So God's glory can shine through something broken, something that we would say is wrong and bad. God works his glory through it. So there's that. I mean, then honestly, that just gets you into like, well, you know, but nothing happens without God, you know, ordaining or allowing, and it's like, fine. And so even when we would look at something and say, well, you know, if God made him blind, I mean, God certainly.
He wasn't the only blind man throughout. Jesus is.
Yeah. There
was more than one.
Oh, sure. And you could even say like, well, you know, God doesn't strike people blind. It's like, Paul would say it.
I think he used that during the time when the Pharisees were all there, and you know.
Sure.
So you guys.
Yeah. So I don't even have a problem with saying, well, God made him blind. It's like, okay. You know, he gave him an affliction. All right. It's like, okay. He allowed him to be afflicted. Cool.
Well, they have a
Same.
disease and all kind of things.
Don't we all have afflictions that God allows us to have?
And if we didn't, what would we need Christ for anyway?
Good point. And I mean, the unfortunate thing is sometimes without those afflictions, we wouldn't. You know, it wouldn't humble us.
Yeah.
Afflictions are really good for humbling you. You know, without those, would we be humbled enough to turn to Christ?
We might be both.
Probably not. Yeah, it's just, I don't really have an issue. I mean, I might address it a little bit more tactfully than, no big deal. But it depends where that person's coming from. I'd approach it from a couple different angles. But yeah, it's like, okay, so he's blind. I mean, we bring sin into the world. So when we ask the question, like, why sin? Well, get a mirror. You know, that's why sin. What is God's purpose and all that? To show his glory through it. You know, if we hadn't brought this into the equation, there wouldn't be that need. You know, we'd still be Garden of Eden. But you know, he works through the broken pieces that we've. Here, God, here's my life. It's like, okay, I guess I'll do something with this. So, see what you're missing out on, Lizzie. She's like, I'm barely staying awake.
He's still on Hawaii time. It's okay.
Oh, you know, yeah, that's. It was nice, right? Yeah. Did you try poi? Like that purple with what is it? Taro roots.
I had some, yeah,
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
tasty.
Did not rock her world.
Yeah, it's not. It's like ooh poi, and you're supposed to eat it. And it's like ooh, and then it's just taro root mush. And it's like ooh, okay. Everyone should be able to go to Hawaii at least once, so you can check that one off.
Yep, there you go. Goes downhill from here, kiddo.
There's Frankenmuth, that's nice too. Any other thoughts or comments about the text? Nobody? Sure, on the morning that I'm actually awake.
I've already heard this one.
You probably have. I told you all about the Magic Eye posters or pictures, right? I was going to use, in my first draft of the sermon, I was going to use that as the sermon illustration. Because, like, you know, seeing things and seeing something that you didn't see before, and that was kind of the approach I was going, but then I used I used something from last week, so it was a much better illustration. But years ago, and it was here, I was working on a sermon and I was using Magic Eye posters or pictures as the illustration because I've never been able to see those. I mean, they were all, back in the 90s, you know, at malls, there were stores set up, Magic Eye poster stores. And you'd walk by, and I always tried to see them, see the books with all the Magic Eye pictures. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, so it's yeah, that probably helps too.
They're those stereoscopic pictures. They look like just big colorful fields, but you're supposed
Yeah,
to
like
look
that.
at them and relax and see through them, and it forms a big.
So this is
Well, you see different things in it.
Yeah.
just one. So it looks like that. They look like that. It's just abstract,
Yeah.
and it's just it's repeating patterns of either shapes, pictures, whatever. But the point is, yeah, you're supposed to like. And there's all these relax your eyes, look through it.
And then you see something else.
Well, and what happens is there's like this 3D image kind of embedded in it. And so once you're able to do that, supposedly you see the 3D image. I could never do that. I mean, I tried so hard to see these things. So I'm writing this sermon, and the illustration was going to be all about how I can't see, yet you know what? The point was, even though I still can't see it, I still believe. Right? I still know it's in there. Yeah, it's not a great metaphor, but yeah, as illustrations go, it's okay. So it's like it's late at night, Saturday night, and I'm writing this thing, and I'm like, you know what? I should probably pull up a Magic Eye picture so I can, use it as like I can print it up. So I pull one up, and I'm like, all right, I'll give it another shot. So help me God! In like 5 seconds, I can see the 3D image now. And since then, I could pull one of those up and I see it like that.
You were blind and now you see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, hey, still works as a great image, but it did not work for that sermon at all. Completely ruined my where I was going with it. So, I'm not sure what that says. But, yeah, so I was going to use that for this one, but I'm like, I don't want it.
It was more for you than the congregation.
Yeah. Maybe I should use like an illustration how I always play the lottery and I don't win. Tempted. See if that works. Oh no, I was going to tell you how I always lose the lottery and no, you know what? I win like $10. That would be it. Oh, God knows better. He knows not to give me money. You've seen my office. Wow, you got so much money. What did you buy a new house? Did you pay off your bills? No.
Bought another coffee cup.
Yep. Bought every big cup it was ever made. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Cool. Then we'll call it. Call a little bit early so now I can be prepared. I gotta get my pink shoes on. All right. Thank you for being so quiet.